Hey guys, VaulSC here. I want you to imagine that you leave the house and you go for a walk and you go down to the local park. Maybe you're walking your dog, and at the park there is a pond with some ducks swimming in the pond. And as you approach the pond, you see that there is a sign there that says this: "Do not feed the ducks." And you're standing there with your bag of bread and you're thinking, damn, I was planning on giving the food to the ducks, but there's a rule here that I must follow that I should not feed the ducks, so I'm just going to not feed the ducks, okay? But why though? You might be sitting there thinking, well, what's the reason for this rule? Now, what I've been told by some people who know more about nutrition than me is that apparently bread is not actually that good for ducks, and it can actually make them sick, so it's not really a good idea to feed them that bread. So that may be the reason for the rule. But a lot of people don't really know that kind of thing, and you can sort of imagine coming up to this sign in the park here and going, well, why not? Why should you not feed the ducks? And what's the reason for them putting that rule there? Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's the fact that, I don't know, people are just throwing bread to the ducks all the time, and the ducks aren't eating it all, and it's just leaving a mess, and it's attracting other pests and things, and perhaps that's the reason why we can't give them the bread. Or maybe the theory is that the local city council has an employee that comes through in the morning and feeds all the animals, including the ducks, and they've got plenty to eat, and if you give them the bread, they're overeating and they're having too much to eat, and it's just a waste, so that might be the reason as well. So you can easily imagine people, arriving here and not really understanding why the rule is in place, and sometimes coming to the wrong conclusion about the whole situation. I want you to imagine instead, though, that you come to the pond and there's this sign instead, which says, obviously, don't give the bread to the ducks, but it actually goes into a bit more of an explainer that actually sort of gives you an idea of why you shouldn't be giving the bread to the ducks, and then it even gives a little bit of information about what you can do. So it's just a little bit more transparent, and everybody arrives at the same conclusion, and it's just generally a better way of doing things because people feel a little bit more comfortable with following rules and knowing that the person who came up with the rules in the first place is doing the right thing when they can hear the reasoning for it. Same thing applies to game development as well. So if you take a look at this is from a popular PC game called Age of Empires 4. You play on computer and you take control of like an ancient civilization that fights against other civilizations, and sometimes people figure out strategies which are a little bit too powerful and makes the game less interesting or exciting, so they come through and they fix things. So in this particular patch, they made some of the units move slower while they're carrying food around, and they changed the armor that horsemen have. But you can see that there's these development notes. They've actually explained why they've actually changed the rules for you, and this is something that their community was asking for. In some of their previous rules updates, what they were doing is they were just saying, okay, here's the change, and here is the new rule that you have to follow, and it didn't seem to make sense to a lot of people. People couldn't understand what direction the game was being taken in. They couldn't understand whether the developers had made a mistake or just weren't listening to feedback. But once we see these developer notes, it just becomes a bit clearer about what everybody is trying to do and the direction things are going in, and it really alleviates a lot of ill feeling and confusion in general, okay? Now, as you guys know, I'm going to be talking about Corvus Belli, and they recently put out this new errata, which has got a lot of people talking, and typically Corvus Belli hasn't been great at giving reasoning for their rules and their changes and keeping people informed and doing it in a transparent way. They occasionally give us a little bit of a hint and an explanation, but this is a good example of a errata, a new set of rules that don't particularly, they're not particularly well explained as to what is going on. Let me just talk to you about why that could be an issue potentially. All right, so one of the things that we see in this new errata affects the way that ballistic skill attacks are declared and resolved. All right. So in the version of the game that you guys are used to playing, you might be in a situation where you've got the FIDE. I've just put this little marker here to show that it's in impersonation state. By the way, to those TTS Guys who are watching this video, we currently have a wrecked version of the state, so you might want to fix that, but let's just pretend that this FIDE here is in impersonation state. So what you normally do is you spend your order and you declare a short skill move, and he comes around over to here. Maybe he looks around the corner, maybe he pokes back, and you've got the Pano player over here with an Auxilia and a Orc-Spot attached to it. The Orc-Spot can fire a deadly flamethrower template here, and of course the Orc-Spot can fire back with his combi rifle, right? So what happens is that normally you'd move around here, and these guys would declare a delay, because they're allowed to do that while he's got the impersonation marker on. Then you'd shoot, or throw smoke, or do whatever you're going to do, maybe dodge, and that would get rid of this marker, so he's been revealed now, and these guys get a chance to shoot back. That's the way Infinity is normally played, okay? What sort of has been happening last year is they messed around with the rules a little bit, and it came to people's attention that declaring a close combat attack, you didn't necessarily have to be in base contact at the time you declared it. You just had to get around into contact for it to be valid. So, unfortunately, that stopped people from shooting back at you when you did that move. Which wasn't great, because the ballistic skill attack rules said that, you know, you can't declare your shooting here if your opponent's in total cover, meaning that, you know, you're out of line of sight, they can't even see you at all. All right. So what the new errata has done is it's removed the requirement that the shooting attack, you know, must be done between models that have line of fire that, you know, aren't obstructed by terrain. So the previous condition that you can't declare the ballistic skill attack if your opponent's in total cover, that's been removed now. So what that means is that you can have this situation where the FIDE declares a ballistic skill attack from here. Can't see the enemy from here, but he declares it anyway, which removes impersonation state. He's revealed now. And although he can't shoot anything yet, later on in the order he's going to come around here. Now that provokes a zone of control ARO from these guys, because they're within zone of control, as you can see. All right. And these guys similarly can declare a ballistic skill attack without having line of fire here, if they expect the FIDE to come around the corner, because, you know, it's no longer a condition or requirement of making a ballistic skill attack that the enemy is in total cover or not in total cover. It doesn't really come down to that. It's just you can declare it and see what happens. So in this example, the FIDE shoots, these guys shoot, and then if and only if the FIDE comes around the corner here, maybe he moves back, but if he reaches line of sight at any point during that movement, they all shoot each other, and that's resolved as normal, right? So what that does is it prevents something that was just kind of happening in the past, where the FIDE declares a close combat attack. These guys have to just dodge or do something that, you know, they're allowed to do, and then she just comes around and just wrecks them in close combat. But now, if she attempts that by declaring close combat here, these guys can declare shoot. They can shoot her as she's coming around the corner. The only thing, though, is that the new errata says that you can do that for some kinds of ballistical attacks, but not others. So, how are direct template weapons placed during the order expenditure sequences? Blah, 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 blah. And then, let me just go and check here. All the placement rules must be fulfilled when declaring the attack. Okay, so the part where it says when declaring, that's the really crucial part, okay? So the FIDE declares a shot with the boarding shotgun using the roll to hit mode, not the template mode. This Auxilia shoots with a combi rifle. That's fine. But this Orc-Spot only has a heavy flamer. Now, at the point the shot's being declared, there's nobody in line of sight with a heavy flamer, and if we go and grab a template like this, the template has to be placed in such a way that it actually covers the FIDE and doesn't go through the terrain. So you can't do that, meaning that at the time of declaration, the flamethrower thing isn't actually legal, meaning that what happens is that when the FIDE completes the order and moves around here, possibly pulls back a bit, this bot does nothing. Okay, so it's a shootout between the FIDE and the Auxilia. The Auxilia will be ballistic skill 11, +3 to hit from range, -3 for cover, -3 for surprise attack, needing an 8 on 1 dice, and the FIDE will be at 2 dice, needing something like 14s. So it's very likely the FIDE will shoot the Auxilia without being burnt by the Orc-Spot. Okay, you guys all follow that? That makes sense. So that's the new errata. That's how the game's supposed to be played now, or is it? So I know that there'll be a group of people, like a certain camp of people watching this and who have read the errata, who are thinking, well, actually, what's happened here is that Corvus Belli have very deliberately and carefully put that wording in to make it so that you can't just defend your corners with chain rifles and flamethrowers and weapons like that all the time. It means the game, it's harder to defend. It's more interesting now because you can move around corners and shoot everybody and blow everybody up. And that's the way the game's intended, and that's a good thing. And look, if that's your point of view, if that's how you feel about things, then great. I'm not trying to shame you or trying to say that you're wrong or speak out against you in any way like that. That's just one point of view, which is kind of, a possible one to have right now. There's also another little group of people who can see that, okay, well, this particular interaction's probably an oversight from Corvus Belli. They didn't quite mean for templates to be basically unusable in the reactive turn in small situations like this. But it's a good thing for the game. We can move on happily knowing that, people aren't going to be defending corners with their direct template weapons all the time. We can just go ahead. And then, of course, there's the third and probably larger camp of people who are looking at this going, it's just a mistake. They've just made an error here. They weren't actually expecting this at all. It wasn't at all their intention to suddenly take a whole bunch of units in the game and make them really pathetic at defending like this Auxilia team. It's just something which they've done wrong that they need to fix ASAP, and people who are organizing tournaments should be sort of ruling against this. So there are these various different camps of people, but I think you guys can now appreciate why something like a little developer's note would make a difference. You give us the rule, you explain why you've made the change, and if you do that, and then what happens is, like, we look at it and go, oh, hang on a second, what you're trying to achieve, what you're intending to achieve, hasn't actually been achieved by the rules that you've laid out. That makes it a little bit easier for us to react and just either put our hands up and go, hang on a sec, you didn't intend for template weapons like that to be just completely... there's so many things I can say there. You guys know what I'm saying here. You guys can sort of follow along with this. So the takeaway, I think, here is that, first of all, it'd be good if the people who actually come up with the rules for these erratas could just explain themselves a little bit more in the document. To go a bit further from that, I actually think it'd be really good if the people from Corvus Belli who design these rules would interact with the English-speaking community a bit more. I mean, we are constantly having discussions about rules interactions, and we're asking questions in the forums, and we're asking reasonably nicely for things to be resolved and to be clarified and explained. And to be honest with you, I mean, an errata like this comes in, and sometimes it does get things right. Sometimes it actually does fix things like this. Do impetuous activations generate AROs? Like, there were a couple of people sort of, querying that. That fixes that. There was another one where it's like, if you're unconscious, does that stop people from using cautious movement or recamoing? And like they did sort of figure out, like over here, the solution to that, right? But then you've got other parts of the document where it's like you've now got to measure the distance between your mine layer model and the mine. So presumably, if you read that black and white, purely rules as written, you should really technically be placing your mine layer and measuring out to where the mine is. Now, it's in the game as it exists at the moment, it's already pretty easy to see where the mines are and where they're not. Like, it's not, very effective closed information, but now they're just sort of making it even more spelt out where the mine is and where the guy is. And if you want to take that to its extreme, like if you really want black and white rules as written, rules lawing based on this errata, you could even say that the hidden deployment model, like a Spectre or a Crocman that has mine layer, you've got to measure the range from the guy that's laying the mine to where the mine is, and that's giving away the actual location of your hidden deployed unit. I mean, technically that's what you should be doing, according to this. And again, it just doesn't feel like that's the intention of the people who are writing these rules, but that's what we take away from it when we read the wording, which again is why, if you change the rules, it can be so useful to spell out why you're changing it and just put, in this little bubble what your intention is, because then people can go, aha, they weren't intending for these unforeseen sort of side effects to pop out, therefore we can safely play our games without actually taking into account all these other things that sort of seem possible that shouldn't be possible, and that's a much better way of doing it. Where to from here? Well, I've got a tournament coming up in February, and I will quite clearly put in the rules of the tournament, what you can and can't do after this errata. If there hasn't been any more clarifications from Corvus Belli since then, I suspect other tournament organizers will do the same. It's a shame that we kind of have to do that, because as soon as you put your neck out and you tell people, to play the game differently than it's currently being played, there's always a camp of people who just, come up against you, and it's sort of like there are people who think, wow, Corvus Belli are the gods, they're omniscient, they know everything, and, as soon as something even slightly tweaked happens with the game, then that's exactly how they intended it, and everybody needs to fall in line and do it exactly that way. There's always going to be that sort of resistance to trying to make this game better for ourselves as a community, knowing that, Corvus Belli are a bit behind on doing that for us, which is a shame. Damn, just on a personal note, this weekend I was planning on getting some people over to film some sort of comedic skits like I did last year, but that fell through, so that's a shame. Hoping to do a bit more of that next month, but in the meantime, enjoy your discussions on the forums and in Discord about this errata. A bunch of people aren't particularly happy with it, not very surprising. But yeah, I think the best thing you can do is talk to your opponent about how you want to play it, and, just be clear about what you're getting into when you go to a tournament, and hopefully, if we keep chatting about it and keep sort of putting our hand up, eventually Corvus Belli may interact with us and actually start taking our views into account. It would be so easy to appoint like a community manager that comes and speaks to the English-speaking community and chats about what the problems are, what's needed, go back, actually use that feedback, put together an errata that's kind of data-driven and sort of, informed by the people who play this game all the time, and then run with that. You'd just save yourself so much hassle and headache. Anyway, I'll leave it there. There's more to say. We can go into the MSV versus MSV2 thing and the zero visibility zones. There's a bunch of other stuff that's come up in this errata that I can get to in later videos. It's a bit of a mess, but I just wanted to generally make this video to say that a lot of people think that they could be more transparent about what they want to achieve and put the rules as intended out there as well as the rules as written, and that would be better.